Imagine a world where a child leaves home believing she is stepping into opportunity only to walk into a storm. This is the journey of Ochanya, her hope, her pain, and the voice she left behind that shook a nation awake. In a quiet Nigerian village tucked between whispering trees and red earth, an 8-year-old girl named Ochanya packed her only school uniform, a gifted second-hand dress wrapped with hope. She was tiny, with curious eyes that always seemed to chase horizons no one else noticed. Her voice was soft, but her dreams roared louder than any storm. The village had no school, no blackboard dust floating in morning light, no alphabet chants, no teacher's voice. But Ochanya hungered for learning the way crops thirst for the first rain. Her family knew it. Everyone did. She'd often trace letters in the sand, reading aloud to the goats who blinked at her in confused admiration. Her mother watched silently, smoothing Ochanya's hair with trembling hands. Mothers often know more than they speak, and this mother felt a wind shifting a mix of pride and a strange fear she couldn't name. "You will learn, my child," she whispered. "Go, shine, come back strong." Ochanya nodded. In her small chest beat a fierce determination. Education was not a luxury where she came from. It was a lifeline, a bridge out of scarcity. Her aunt lived in a town with real classrooms, real books, real promise. That was where her future waited, or so everyone believed. Outside, neighbors gathered. Children her age clutched her skirt, eyes wide, asking when she would return. "Soon," she promised, though she didn't fully understand time beyond the rhythm of seasons. She only knew this. She would return smarter, and her village would be proud. Her father lifted her bag, the bag that carried her one uniform, 2 notebooks, and dreams far heavier than grain sacks after harvest. He walked her to the dusty road where a motorbike waited, coughing smoke into the morning air. The wind whipped through her braids as she climbed on. A thrill ran through her. This was the world opening. New streets, new voices, new lessons. Her heart beat to a drum only she could hear. As the bike rumbled away, the village shrank behind her. Familiar mud walls blurred, then vanished. She didn't look back. Brave souls rarely do when destiny calls. But the earth seemed to hold its breath. Even the birds paused in their morning chatter, as if sensing a chapter beginning, one written in both light and shadow. Hours later, she arrived in her aunt's world. Buildings stood tall. Children in crisp uniforms marched toward classrooms. For Ochanya, it felt like stepping into a folktale where spirits rewarded the determined. Her aunt greeted her with a warm smile, the kind that stretched wide but didn't quite reach the eyes. Still, Ochanya hugged her tightly, believing she was safe, believing the world worked the way good hearts imagined it did. She believed adults protected dreams, not crushed them. As dusk washed the town in orange and purple, she knelt by her borrowed bed, whispering a thank you prayer. Tomorrow, she would walk into a real school for the first time. She imagined chalk in her hand, books opening like doors, sentences dancing like fireflies. Outside, night fell gently. Inside, a young girl wrapped herself in fragile hope. No one, not the crickets, not the wind, not even the stars, knew that her journey toward knowledge would lead her into a battle far darker than childhood should ever know. But for now, she slept, heart full, dreams blooming like wildflowers in untouched soil. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet strength formed the kind legends are made of, the kind that rises even when the world is unkind. Ochanya woke each morning with soft hope and a hungry mind. Books felt like sunrise. Her school uniform, though worn, felt royal. Teachers praised her. Classmates admired her curiosity. Daytime fed her soul, but night was another universe. It started quietly, too quietly to make sense at first. The aunt's husband would call her when others slept, using soft tones that did not match the sharp cold in his eyes. He would act as though he were helping or checking on her, yet his presence carved fear into her bones. One evening, the air thick with harmattan dust, he asked her to help him with a small task in the sitting room. She obeyed. Children obey. That is the law of innocence. But the moment the door clicked behind them, she felt the world shrink. His voice shifted. His touch became a command, not care. Her small frame stiffened. Tears filled her eyes, but no sound came. Something precious was taken without loudness, without mercy. She could not describe it. She did not have the words. But pain has its own language. After that night, a silence lived in her chest. Days passed. Books, chalk, and sunlight tried to repair her, but dread now travelled with her like a shadow she could not outrun. She avoided eye contact. She flinched at footsteps. She began to walk like someone trying not to be seen. Then, another night, this time the cousin, a boy too old to be ignorant, too young to be forgiven. He cornered her when the house was heavy with sleep. He claimed it was a game. His grin was loud, her terror louder inside, though not a sound escaped her lips. Again, innocence was treated like something disposable. There were no screams. In that house, silence was law. On a third night, she tried to run to her aunt's room for safety. She whispered, trembling, trying to explain, but the aunt, without looking up, waved a tired hand. Go and rest. Don't disturb the night. The door closed. The child stood alone in the hallway. That moment cut deeper than anything else when protection stood so close, yet chose to pretend blindness. From then on, Ochanya slept curled tight, like she was trying to fold herself out of existence. She prayed with tiny hands and tired eyes. She whispered to the walls, to ancestors, to anything listening, "Please, not again." School remained her safe island, but even there sorrow leaked through. Her laughter grew faint, her spark flickered. Teachers noticed her fading light without understanding why. Yet she kept learning, she kept hoping. A warrior child trapped in a storm she never called upon. At night, she survived. At dawn, she rose. And though each day she tried to gather her shattered pieces, the house gathered new shadows around her. This was no home. It was a cage painted as opportunity, a place where a dreamer came seeking knowledge and instead met a silence filled with suffering. Still, in her heart, a stubborn ember refused to die. Pain would not erase her purpose. Even in darkness, she held on to the belief that one day truth would rise like morning sun, bright, unstoppable, and seen by all. At 13, Ochanya stepped off the bus like a ghost carrying a school bag. Her parents rushed to greet her, expecting a taller girl, a brighter face, stories of classrooms and dreams unfolding. But what they saw stunned the air into stillness. She looked older, yet smaller. Her eyes didn't dance anymore, they hid. Her steps were careful, as though every movement hurt. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled instead. Mothers know. Her mother felt the truth before hearing it. Her arms wrapped around her daughter, and she felt bones too sharp beneath thin skin. Days passed, but the joy of reunion never arrived. At night, her mother heard muffled whimpers. In the morning, she found soiled cloth, damp bedsheets, a shame the child never earned. Ochanya tried to hide it, wiping with trembling hands, face burning with embarrassment she didn't deserve. She whispered apologies for something that was never her fault. When her mother asked what happened, silence answered. A long, heavy silence soaked with fear. Trauma teaches silence more fluently than language. Soon, neighbors noticed, not because she spoke, but because suffering has a scent, heartbreak has footsteps. Her walk grew painful. She clenched her belly often, flinching. She could not sit comfortably. She avoided food. She avoided mirrors. She avoided questions. Doctors were consulted. Tests were run. Terms were whispered in hospital corridors, terms too heavy for a 13-year-old body to carry. Internal injuries, severe infection, tear, leakage, damage from repeated harm. Her father listened with fists clenched so tight they shook. Her mother wept into cloth to avoid scaring her child. The truth finally spilled not from Ochanya's mouth, but from her pain. And when asked again who hurt her, she whispered two names. Names that carried once trusted faces, names spoken like poison. The house froze. The air thickened. The world tilted. Her father rose like a storm, ready to break. Her mother collapsed in disbelief. In that moment, the village learned a bitter truth. Sometimes danger doesn't live in shadows. Sometimes it sits at family tables and calls itself guardian. Word spread fast, as news does in close-knit communities. Some people gasped, some doubted. Some whispered blame at the victim because society often finds comfort in protecting the familiar rather than the innocent. But many believed her, because pain that deep does not lie. The journey for justice began not with power, not with certainty, but with a desperate mother holding her daughter's fragile hand while walking through a system built to doubt the powerless. The police listened, but not with urgency. They questioned, scribbled notes, shrugged shoulders, and eventually took only one person into custody, the aunt, punished not for the child's suffering, but for staying silent when she should have been a shield. The men responsible walked free that day. Freedom felt like insult. The family waited for a knock that never came, for justice that moved slower than grief. Meanwhile, Ochanya fought to survive her own body. Each day was a battle against infection, against pain, against memories that crawled into her chest at night and strangled sleep. Her once bright voice faded into soft murmurs. Sometimes she tried to smile to comfort her parents. Sometimes she gave in to quiet sobs no child should ever know. Her dream had been simple education, opportunity, a better tomorrow. Instead, she returned with scars the world could not see, but her body could not hide. Her parents prayed, doctors tried, neighbors murmured, and time walked forward as though unaware a child's life was splintering piece by piece. But pain has a way of sharpening purpose. Even in her weakness, something inside her refused to bend completely. A seed of strength rooted itself deep, silent, stubborn, waiting. Because injustice might silence a child for a moment, but truth learns to roar. Hospitals became her second home, bed sheets her battlefield. Nurses whispered. Doctors shook their heads with heavy eyes. Each diagnosis came like a fresh wound. Internal damage, broken passages, infections that would not leave. A body leaking because it had been pushed beyond what childhood could bear. She moved slowly now, like every step was a negotiation with pain. Her mother held her often, humming lullabies she once sang to help her sleep as a baby. Now they were sung to help her stay. A child who once chased books now fought just to breathe without crying. The family knocked on every door they could find. Police, medical centers, local leaders, community elders. But justice in a broken system moves like water through clogged stone, slow, frustrated, and sometimes not at all. Some asked cruel questions. Some suggested silence. Some preferred comfort over truth. The men she named continued their daily routines, walking the streets with a peace they had stolen from her. That sight alone was a wound to her father, who paced the yard like a lion trapped behind bars of law and culture. Still, the family refused to give up. They begged authorities. They pushed for action. They demanded accountability. And every time someone tried to dismiss them, the mother's voice rose again, soft, tired, but unbroken. Meanwhile, Ochanya grew weaker. Once, during a painful procedure, she gripped her mother's hand and whispered, "I tried to be brave." The room broke. Even the nurse wiped her eyes. Some days she tried to laugh, forcing light into moments thick with sorrow. Other days, she stared ahead quietly, as though replaying years she never got to live freely. She asked if she would ever return to school. Her father promised yes, because sometimes hope is the only medicine left. But hope cannot always outrun damage. One evening, the sun sank behind the hills in a deep red blush, and the world seemed too still. Ochanya lay breathing shallow, eyelids heavy, voice soft like wind through dry grass. Her mother prayed. Her father held her hand as though anchoring her to earth, and in a quiet exhale, like a candle sighing before dark, she slipped away. There were no screams, just a silence so heavy it felt like the sky bowed. Word spread, first whispers, then wails. The community mourned. Women cried openly. Men shook their heads at the cruelty of a world that protects the powerful before the innocent. But sorrow did not sit quietly. It rose. Mothers gathered. Youth groups spoke. Churches prayed aloud for justice. The streets filled with murmurs, first small, then sharp. This cannot end here. A rally formed. Handwritten signs lifted. Voices trembled but refused to break. Justice for Ochanya echoed through dusty roads and crowded markets. Still, authorities answered cautiously, slowly, as if hoping time would smother the noise. One arrest, not for the act itself, but for silence in the wrong direction. A half measure. A reminder of how systems protect themselves. Even in passing, Ochanya carried an aura. her photo, quiet eyes, soft smile became a symbol. Not pity, but power. Innocence taken, innocence remembered. Her parents buried her with trembling hands. Soil covered her small body, but not her story. A flower was placed on the grave. Then another. Then many. Like seeds planted by grief, waiting to bloom into change. And as the village night settled, as grieving voices lowered into prayer, one truth pulsed in the air. This child did not leave quietly. The pain she endured refused to fade into silence. Some stories begin after life ends, and hers was only gathering its storm. Ochanya's name did not disappear. It lived in corners of conversations, in the minds of mothers who whispered warnings to daughters, in classrooms where her empty seat became a memory lesson. But the world moves fast, and pain sometimes settles, like dust, quiet, unseen, waiting, until the day it rose again. One morning, without warning, her story resurfaced online. A tweet, a shared post, a photo of a girl whose eyes carried both innocence and unfinished justice. Then another share and another. Soon, voices multiplied across Nigeria, across continents, echoing the same cry. Justice for Ochanya. What began as a murmur erupted into a nationwide tremor. Activists, students, journalists, women's groups, human rights advocates, voices from cities, towns, villages joined one drumbeat. Hashtags trended. Placards lifted high. Drums sounded in protests. People moved like a river determined to carve its path through stone. Suddenly, authorities who once walked slowly began to run. The case once buried under paperwork and bureaucracy was reopened. Old files dusted off, names revisited, witnesses called. This time, the world was watching. And when the law came knocking, the home once filled with silence answered with emptiness. The aunt's husband and the cousin, once confident in darkness, vanished. No forwarding address, no whispered goodbye. Gone into hiding like shadows fleeing dawn. Rumors spread. Some said they fled to another town. Others whispered they crossed borders under darkness. Some claimed powerful connections shielded them. But the truth was simple. They ran from a justice they thought would never wake. The government issued notices. Search teams formed. The hunt began not quietly, not softly, but boldly. Their faces traveled across news channels, across social media, across the country. Villagers, traders, commuters, even school children recognized them. Hiding became their new prison. Meanwhile, in her village, the wind carried a different sound. Elders believed spirits return when justice is unfinished. Mothers swore they felt a presence near her grave, a peaceful weight in the air, like someone watching, waiting. Children walking past her resting place felt shivers and whispered prayers, as though they sensed pure strength lingering. Some nights the wind rustled leaves like a gown sweeping the ground. Some evenings a sudden calm fell across the yard where her mother often sat staring at the horizon, whispering her name. And once a neighbor said she saw a small shadow in the moonlight, standing as though keeping guard. Not haunting, not hurting, just waiting. Ochanya's spirit, they believed, hovered not for revenge, but for closure. A child robbed of safety, searching still for balance, for truth, for peace. The protests grew. Candles lit streets in remembrance marches. Stories about her became teaching guides in schools. Her name slipped into sermons, into speeches, into songs sung by youth groups demanding a safer world for girls and boys everywhere. And though the culprits hid, they could not outrun time. They could not outrun truth. They could not outrun a nation now awake. Years had tried to bury her story, but legends are stubborn. And she, without ever choosing it, had become an emblem of resilience, a symbol of the fight against silence, a child whose courage still echoed in the final moments of twilight each day, when the sky glows gold then violet. Villagers say a soft breeze moves across her grave, gentle, warm, almost protective, as if she walks with the wind, watching, waiting for justice to complete its circle. Her body rests. Her voice does not. Her name became a drum in the hands of the people. Her spirit became a guardian over the truth. And until justice touches every corner of her story, until the hiding ends and truth stands fully in daylight, Ochanya remains present, powerful, remembered, and unbroken. Because some spirits do not fade. Some remain to finish what the living could not.